Hi, I'm Robert Willock. I'm the director of the Economist Corporate Network for the MENA region here in Dubai. I'm joined today by the Economist Intelligence Unit's Director of Global Forecasting, John Ferguson, who was here to help with the annual conference yesterday at the Address Boulevard Hotel. I wanted to take the opportunity while John is with us to ask him his views on the global economy and some of the risks that he sees that might affect the Middle East region. So John, what are the big risks that we see at the moment for the global economy and how might they translate to the Middle East region?
Yes, great question. The biggest risk is the trade war. So it's this bilateral trade war between the US and China. We've been talking to clients for a long time that this is a major risk, but now unfortunately we think it actually will escalate to the point where it's impacting economic growth around the world, particularly the US and China, but it will impact economic growth around the world as well. This is our biggest forecast. It's our most impactful forecast for the global economy, and it will actually pose a risk here to the MENA region.
So how might that trade war affect the Middle East region? What kind of contagion might we expect for the Middle East?
I think the biggest thing to focus on for people doing business here in the region would be the currency markets. So we should expect volatility. The dollar has been strong this year, which has been putting pressure on emerging markets anyway. But as we see this trade war escalate and potentially other sort of things between the US and China, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more volatility in currency markets, which will impact currencies here in the region.
So 5 out of the 6 GCC countries, for example, have their currencies pegged to the dollar. So what kind of movements can we expect to see for the dollar and therefore for some of these regional currencies?
We expect the dollar to maybe strengthen in the short term, but I'd also say that we expect a fair bit of volatility around that. So that's the short-term trend will be dollar strengthening. In the next 2 or 3 years, there might be some softening after that period. So that's the general trend that we believe is ahead for the dollar. But again, I'd say with the trade war and a lot of volatility, and what we have to understand nowadays is that there's a lot of geopolitical risk in the world right now, and the trade war is the best example of that. But we've seen many other sort of flashpoints of geopolitical risk. So for anyone watching the currency markets, we need to watch those geopolitical risks very carefully. And to me, that just means we should expect more volatility in those markets.
What are we expecting in terms of US interest rates and how that might affect the region here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the Fed has a really challenging task on their hands at the moment. They have to assess whether this trade war is permanent or temporary. That makes a really big difference for them. In our view, they'll raise interest rates once more this year in 2018 as we stand, but also 3 times next year. So they'll be a little bit more cautious next year, but still raising their interest rates there in the US. So that will put a little bit of upwards pressure on the dollar, even though most of that has been priced in. But again, I'd expect volatility, and we all need to watch the Fed very, very closely because inflation is a concern. It's a risk. It's something that the Fed is watching, and we need to understand and watch how the trade war and the tariffs is going to impact on inflation, and then how the Fed interprets that impact.
Okay, so that's the risk of the trade war. Are there any potential opportunities for the Middle East coming out of this trade war between the US and China?
I think there is. I think people should really look at, and the firms that I speak to and that we speak to around the world, many firms are really considering their supply chains right now, and that's understandable. When you have a major trade war between the world's 2 biggest economies, people have to consider, are my supply chains safe? Do I need to move them? So in talking to our clients, many of them are thinking about it. If they haven't done it already, they are absolutely thinking about shifting their supply chains. Now that's mostly, say, from the Asia region and with supply chains running through China. But you can imagine if people are shifting their supply chains, I think that will present an opportunity for other parts of the world, like the MENA region where we are now.
Great. So as ever, risk and opportunity. That's all from the Economist Corporate Network today. Thank you.